guys, and welcome back to the channel. For today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Legacy Deluxe class Point Blank and Peacemaker. And overall I think for a Deluxe class it's actually pretty nicely done. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. I think the biggest issue that this figure in particular suffers from is that he's not in the Voyager class. I think Hasbro tried to cram as much as possible in the Deluxe price point, which has ultimately led to quite a few corners cut, and I think had they just bumped him up in scale and price, he probably would have been perfect. As for a mainline Deluxe, this guy's great. I mean, in terms of scale, he's one of the biggest Deluxes we've seen. He's made out of pretty decent plastic, and they have actually given us Peacemaker, whilst not a great Peacemaker, and we may as well touch base with him to start off with. So here we have the Target Master. I think in terms of the gun mode, it looks okay, but as we bring in the previous Target Masters from Siege, this is a massive downgrade, not only in terms of scale, but in terms of transformation and design. This thing doesn't look nowhere near as cool as what we're used to, and I think that once you set the standard for something, you should either try and surpass it or keep to the same standard, not take 2 steps backwards. So had this been a Voyager, I definitely think that we could have seen something more along the lines of this when in comparison to this. But gun mode wise, I mean, it does look okay. We do get some decent sculpt work here for the front. However, the transformation is very simplistic. So basically all you do is fold the legs down, take the barrel of the gun, fold this section up, and there we have Peacemaker fully transformed up into robot mode. Peacemaker, what a joke. You can't see him, you can't see him, and it's basically a brick. There's nothing you can do here in regards to the robot mode at all. I do think design-wise it looks okay though. Sculpt definitely is the saving grace for this, and the paint also is pretty nicely done, but yet again I do think that there has been some big corners cut, and had this been a Voyager, would have we seen something better? I definitely think so. Now, to give you guys a direct comparison in regards to the engineering that we're used to, with the old Target Masters we actually had ball joints for the arms, we had ball joints for the legs, loads more moved. And as you guys can see, the old Target Masters were significantly bigger when in comparison to this new one. So I just think once you set a standard, you should stick to that and definitely not go backwards. So be sure to let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think. Personally, I would have rather them had perhaps skipped this completely and given more budget and time to the actual standalone figure, or as I've said before, bumped him up to the Voyager price point. And then we come to Point Blank. Now, as an actual standalone robot mode from the front, I think this guy looks great. He's incredibly well made, besides some issues that I have with the ball joints for the torso, and he's a really decent size. You'll definitely see that when it comes to comparisons, and he's been painted amazingly, and from the front it's probably one of the best mainline Point Blanks that we've seen. But as we come around here to the back, the figure has some ghastly, and as you guys can see, the ball joints have popped off. That is something that I'll mention during transformation, but we do get these massive ghastly hollow spaces in the back of the legs. Now, I know why they're there, it's due to transformation, but had this been a Voyager, I'm almost certain they could have found a way to have given us an additional cover. And you'll also notice that there are a few hollow spaces here for the arms, and there are also some proportion issues, especially when it comes to the forearms. But design-wise here for the head, I think it looks really nicely done. The paint and the sculpt work for this looks fantastic. I think the shoulders have turned out great, and they'll no doubt use this for a punch-counterpunch in the future, as the robot mode design is basically a dead giveaway. But I do like the chest design. I think the transparent blue looks awesome with the baby blue detail applied over the top, and you can actually see a fair amount of sculpted in detail underneath this. So as we actually lift this up, as you guys can see, we do get some cybernetic wiring, which I thought was a pretty nice touch. I do like the colour and the design of the forearms, but I just think they should have been slightly bigger. They do look a little dainty when in comparison to the rest of the figure, and that does significantly compromise articulation, which is a shame. And then we come to the hips. Now, when this was first shown off and I did my announcement video for this guy, there were a lot of comments that absolutely hated the design of this. Personally, I actually didn't think it was that bad at all, and having it in hand, I still don't have an issue, but I can see your critiques. It doesn't look the greatest in terms of a silhouette. I would have much rather had them maybe sculpted in an additional skirt piece, as basically we do just get this kind of T-zone, which for a modern Deluxe, is it great? Definitely not. But paint and sculpt wise, I do think this whole area looks awesome. I think the front of the legs looks great, especially here for the shins. You can see a very nice blue as well as silver, and the detailing here for the feet also I think looks awesome. So from a frontal perspective, the figure looks great. I think proportions for the most part, besides the arms, also look decent. But as soon as you begin to pose him, I'm sorry to say, but the illusion is very quickly lost. So let's turn to articulation. Here at the head, we do get a ball joint which can look up and down very, very slightly. It can look left to right. The shoulders can rotate the full 360, and I will say the plastic is very dense for this guy. He really does feel very well made, and due to transformation, you can hinge this out to the side as well as hinge the actual shoulder. But the arms, my goodness me, these are atrocious. So we don't get a bicep swivel per se, it's basically an elbow swivel. So this does rotate the full 360, and due to this big piece of vehicle mode kibble that we have, it prevents the arm from bending past 90, which is just so awkward. Not only does this section look so small when in comparison to the rest of the figure, but he just looks awkward in any type of pose. It's really difficult to actually get him looking decent besides just being in a standard vanilla pose. So I definitely think this entire area should have been redesigned, and what adds even further insult to injury is that as you actually rotate it around for transformation, you do get a really decent 90-degree bend there out of the elbow. So why they couldn't have found a way to have inverted these is completely beyond me. But in terms of wrist rotation, it's fixed into place. We don't get any type of swivel, although we do get an amazing range here at the waist. The legs can kick forwards that far. They could probably go slightly further if you hinge the chest piece out of the way, so that's great. They can also kick back, which is awesome, out to the sides, rotation here at the thigh, way past 90 due to the nature of the design, and of course considering that the legs are hollow, which I think is cool. And then as we come down here to the foot, we do get an ankle rocker pivot, which can bend to a really great degree. So articulation wise, for the most part, it's decent. Besides this area, I just think the arms are the biggest issue that this figure has, and like I said previously, this should have been a Voyager. I think that there would have been so many things fixed had this just been bumped up in terms of scale and price point, and these things are an absolute nightmare, not only in terms of bot mode, but especially when it comes to transformation. Now, size comparison wise, here we have Point Blank alongside his Target Master mate Crosshairs, and as you guys can see, he's definitely a big deluxe. Crosshairs was based on the Siege Ironhide mold, which was one of the biggest deluxes that we saw from the War for Cybertron line, so they definitely aren't slacking when it comes to the scale here of Point Blank. But yeah, these guys look great, especially in terms of a deluxe. I'll be fair and say that this is a really decently sized one. And for another comparison, here we have Point Blank alongside one of the biggest deluxes from the Studio Series line, that being the 86 movie Perceptor. So yet again, definitely decently sized for a deluxe class. And for one final comparison, we have Point Blank alongside the Earthrise leader class Optimus Prime. And now for transformation, you guys are about to see that for a deluxe class, this is actually fairly complex. I was pleasantly surprised, especially in regards to all of the various different swivels and hinges that we have going on for the arms, but is yet again another reason why I think this should have definitely been a Voyager, as they've tried to cram in as much as possible to the deluxe price point, which has ultimately just led in quite a few fair corners cut. So to kickstart things off, you're going to want to come around here to the back, take this windscreen piece and basically pull this section down. We can then take the head, snap that into place, snap this piece in, and then push this piece here around. Now what you want to do is rotate here at the shoulders, and this is where things can become slightly convoluted. So here we have the front of the arm. Basically, you're going to want to rotate that so that the back is now facing downwards. We can then hinge just like so. You'll then want to bring this section up, take this section here, pull this forwards, and then at the same time rotate this here around, and there is a tiny tab here that will peg into this slot. So just snap that there into place. So a lot of steps that just go into the arms. That is pretty sick engineering if you ask me. Come around here to this side, rotate around. We can then bend here at what would be the elbow. We can then hinge this section down like so. Hinge this around. Bring this here all the way up and over. And then just snap that tab into that slot. We can then take both of the arms and combine them in the center. So just snap them in there just like this. And now comes the challenging part of the transformation, and it really all has to do with these ball joints, which just continuously want to pop off. My goodness, these are the weakest part of the transformation and probably the cheapest part of the figure just in general, as they just have barely any clearance at all. And in terms of their grip, I mean, they pretty much just rest there. It doesn't take much at all to knock them out of place. So what I would recommend to do would just be angle them like that. We can then take the waist, rotate it so the front is now facing the back, take the toes, angle these sections down, and as you guys would presume, we're going to want to tuck the knee joint into the upper section of the thigh. Now there is a tab that will slide into a tiny peg here on the inside of the leg, so just hinge this up, take the cockpit, hinge this section up as well. Now this does have a tendency to latch back into place, so I would definitely recommend just keeping your thumb there to get it out of the way. We'll want to collapse that in, and as you guys can see, there is minimal clearance for us to actually push this part of the foot through this midsection. But once you do that, this will tab into this slot here, and then this tab will shoot into a tiny slot on the underside of the foot. So just snap that in there, and then we can give this section a good push just to ensure that that tab has locked into place. And that's one of the legs fully converted, so that was actually a lot smoother than I was expecting it to be. Come around here to this side and rinse and repeat. So just hinge this section down, snap that there into place, snap this section in, and then snap that into place. And then for some finishing touches, just take the cockpit, click that there into place, and there we have Point Blank fully transformed up into his pretty sick looking Cybertronian race car mode. And I've got to once again give credit where it's due. For a deluxe class, this thing comes together to form a really nicely done looking vehicle mode. Now, design wise, very sleek. I think this thing looks fantastic. Kind of reminds me of something you would expect from the Velocitron subline, and I just think the way it comes together is awesome. So here for the hood, we get a lovely Autobot logo, some nice metallic silver highlights here for the headlights and black detail. The wheels are actually pinned on than as opposed to mushroom pegs, so he can glide along the ground with ease. And we do have the engine block. Now initially this was supposed to be an additional accessory, but due to budgetary constraints they had to just mold it into the figure itself. Once again, had this been a Voyager, I'm almost certain that this would have been executed way better than what it has, but I love the way the windscreen and the cockpit comes together. That there looks fantastic, as so do those blue highlights. So overall, I definitely think it's a decent figure. For a deluxe, it's great, but for an actual figure of Point Blank, it definitely could have been better in my opinion. Now, in regards to the implementation of the Target Master here for vehicle mode, we do get some slots here at the back, basically where the shins were, that these tabs will peg into. So we can just snap them there into place, and there you have Point Blank and Peacemaker fully combined here in the vehicle mode, which in my opinion definitely does complete the look. And something else which was a pretty sweet attention to detail is that they did paint the intakes here black, so that was definitely something nice to see. Definitely not a bad deluxe. I do like the way this guy's turned out overall. I do just wish, however, especially where the arms were in robot mode, they could have fixed them up, and that the Target Master could have been more along the lines to what we were used to from the War for Cybertron line. And for a vehicle mode comparison, we have Point Blank compared alongside, yet again, the deluxe class crosshairs from Siege. And as you guys can see, definitely pretty decently scaled. Point Blank is basically exactly the same size as Crosshairs, albeit is a little more sleek in terms of the design as you would expect. So definitely, I think these guys look great with one another, and I can only hope that we can see more of these Target Master bros released in the future, as they've given us Point Blank and Crosshairs. Surely they're going to give us the rest of them. And so, some final thoughts for the Transformers Legacy Deluxe Class Point Blank and Peacemaker. Overall, I think it's a pretty decent figure. Ultimately, I think what has massively compromised this release is budget. Had this guy been bumped up to a Voyager, I'm almost certain that this could have had the potential to be the best Point Blank that we've ever seen officially released. They've tried to cram an awful lot in the Deluxe Class price point, which has ultimately led to quite a few corners cut. Most significantly would be the Target Master. It is a massive step backwards in regards to design to what we saw from Transformers Siege. I get why they decided to include it. They wanted to give us the complete package of Point Blank with his Target Master, but I do just wish that they would have completely scrapped it all together for this deluxe release, or would have bumped this up to a Voyager and given us a Target Master which was along the same lines as what we saw from Transformers Siege. I think in terms of the robot mode, the figure looks fantastic from the front. I think the colours pop, the plastic all feels great. I'm not the biggest fan of the ball joints where the mid-torso is. They are very easily detachable, both during transformation and just general posing, but I do think the figure has a lot of proportion issues, especially in regards to the arms, and I know there are many of you guys out there that aren't a fan of the way the hips have been designed, and not to mention that he does have some big gaps in the back of the legs when in bot mode. I get why they're there, but had that been a Voyager, I'm almost certain they would have been able to have found a way to have concealed those. Transformation, surprisingly, is fairly complex, especially the way the arms will collapse in upon themselves, so that was surprising, and it does come together to form a pretty sick looking Cybertronian sports car. I think the vehicle mode, for the most part, looks flawless, but I would have loved to have seen what it could have looked like had it been a Voyager. I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I'm not bashing this figure by any means. I think for a deluxe, it's pretty nicely done, but I wouldn't have mind to have paid more to receive a better quality figure. Be sure to let me know down below what you guys think, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.